Hello, Forest Box kids. Miss Katie here. Excited to have you this week for another nature art lesson. Today we are going to be drawing together Rembrandt's shell, which should have been in your art prints this week. But first, let's go over our materials. Our materials this week is simply a pencil that is nice and sharp, a blank sheet of paper, and that is all. You may also, if you like, to have your Rembrandt print out. That will be helpful. But let's first go over our basic elements of design. We will be using a lot of these this week. We have line, shape, form, which is using line or shading or many other methods to create 3 dimensions, something that seems like it's coming off the paper with depth. We have value, which is simply lights and darks, space, color, and texture. We will be using line, shape, definite form, value for sure. We will not be using space today or color, but we will definitely be using texture. All right. So just like last week, what I have for us is a few steps all laid out, okay? This looks pretty complicated, but in actuality, if we follow these steps, it's a pretty simple process. We will start with blocking in our shape and then adding curved lines in different directions to create somewhat of a grid. And then we will, within all of these little shapes, we will be filling in lots of different curved, whether they're diamonds or circles, we'll be filling in all of these diamonds with different shapes, coloring around them with our darkest value, pushing hard on our pencil, creating a very dark shade around these items. And then finally, we are going to be using light strokes to create darks and lights and leaving an area for a highlight where the light is shining on this shell. And at the very end, if you desire, you will be able to, if you like, to color the background really black to make the shell pop off or create a nice shadow depending on what your art print has for you. Some of Rembrandt's art for his shell have a really black background and some just simply have a shadow here. So feel free to add that in when we are done. Without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started with our first step. Now the first thing we're going to do is draw in this circular shape. Now it is not a circle, but an oval. Because if the shell were facing us with its spiral right in here, it would be a perfect circle. But the shell is turned sideways, and this turns the circle to an oval. So when we start off, make sure you are drawing that oval, not a circle. All right. Let's get started with our step 1. I am going to draw it a little bit larger than this. You are welcome to draw any size that you like, okay? And pause as much as you need to. If you want, you can pause now and try to go through all of these steps on your own if that is something that you would like to do. Otherwise, let's draw together. All right. So I am going to start with my oval. And you can modify it as much as you need to make it nice and balanced and even. I might... All right, that is fine for me. Okay, our next step is we're going to draw the top and bottom line, and we are going to create a rounded edge on the end. Just this very top, curve down, and come back. So I'm going to go down. We're making a cone shape. And I'm going to round it on the edge. Okay, so next we're going to start with this straight line, which is the part of the shell that's closest to us wrapping around this part. This is on the outside of this one. So we have a continual straight line coming out. Now we don't want it to come to the corner as I have here. I'm going to bring it a little bit higher about to here. And it's going to be about 1/3 of the way up. And then I'm just going to turn my paper toward me to help create a straight line to here. And this time I'm not going to have it come to the corner as I have here, just a little bit higher, so that you can see the bottom shell is kind of wrapping upward right here. All right, and from here, right about here, I'm going to create another line that comes out beyond. It's going to come out, and I'm going to bring this one out and bring them together. Okay, this is our basic shell shape. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to erase this section here. That way it looks like it's on top. And I'm going to solidify this line and erase any extras. Okay, that is our step 1. Step 2, we are going to create this grid as well as these additional circles. So let's start with these circles. We are only going to be creating 2 curved, like backward C's, and then beyond that, we're going to have a complete circle. So my backward C, I'm going to start a little bit down, and it's going to come out. Kind of like this, okay? A backward C. And I want it to really mimic the shape of the circle or the oval that I've already created. Okay, now we're going to do one more. Okay. Now here we're going to create a complete circle, but it's going to be sitting really close to this edge here. Okay, and then all our little circles that sit inside it, they're going to be very close to this edge and have space here on the right side and really no space on the left side. Okay. We are finished with that. I'm going to add a little bit more of a curve here. It looked a little bit rectangular. All right. So now we are going to start with our grid line that comes down, okay? Now I want you to notice if we're only paying attention to these downward lines, we have a good amount of space between them. And then as we move to the back, they get closer and closer together. So make sure as you create these grids, notice that they get closer together in the end, and they also get straighter up and less curved, all right? I'm going to start with, I've got 1, and then 2, and then 3. So these are nice and wide. And then I'm going to keep coming in, and they're going to get a little bit closer together. And what this is, this creates the idea of form, that it's getting smaller as it goes away from us. Like the shell is tilted away. All right, so we're going to do the same thing on this side. And they're going to still come down. And we're going to kind of just continue the line that's already there. And that way we just follow the guide we've already created. All right. Now we're going to go upward. And it's the same idea. They're going to be farther apart upward and then get closer together. So I'm going to start about midway between this and just curve up. And then my next one is actually going to be start down here. And it's going to connect. And then I'm going to keep the curve. All right, now they're going to start getting closer together and more straight up and down. All right, that looks really good. And what I want to do as on this side, I want to bring each line towards the center piece. So if you have a line here, we're going to bring it in towards the center. And I'm going to pretend there's one right there. And I'm just going to add one there. Okay? And I'm just going to continue these lines toward the center. They're going to be guidelines for us as we move forward. Okay. We are done with step 2. One thing I might do, because this part of the shell is kind of wrapping, I'm going to change the angle of this line right here to have it come a little bit inward, like that. All right. So the next part is kind of fun. We're going to fill in all of these diamonds with different shapes. Now, they can be circular, they can be diamonds, but we want them to kind of all be curved. If you want to really see the idea of these lines in your final shell, you want to make your pieces as big as possible and kind of mimicking the line and coming really close to it and following the direction of it, as these are kind of here. So they can be looser or they can be really close to the line, but we're going to go ahead and fill in all of these shapes, taking up the spaces of these diamonds. And here you can have them kind of come in over this edge. Because this is actually where the shell curves in. And let's go ahead, as I've noted here, let's go ahead and erase this outer circular line. We're going to keep everything else as a guide, but we just want to remove that outer circle. Okay? So these shapes can kind of wrap over the edge if you want. But let's go ahead and move down the shell. These can be really loose. They can be, you can have them really small inside. In my final one, you'll see I made pretty small ones. I'm making larger ones now. Just filling them all in with curvy shapes. And as we get to the end, they're kind of all just going to be maybe little circles, because there's not really much more room for that, for any other shape. However, these are going to get very, very shaded in, so don't worry about these shapes right here being really accurate. We're going to end up shading on top of all of them. So I'm just going to go ahead and draw a whole bunch of little ones. All right, so let's go ahead, and now I want to focus on here. We're going to create shapes that kind of overlap this circle, and then coming in, I would like you to draw shapes that sit on the outside, sit against this first line. So do you see how they're sitting against it? They're not sitting on this side, they're sitting inside the outside of the line. And on this next line, I'm going to do the same thing. They can be circular, long, short, but they're sitting against this side of the line. Now, the reason we're doing this is when we add the shading, the dark shading is going to be sitting on this side. So there's no sense, if it's all going to be black, to bring our shapes towards this side. And here we are not going to add anything. We might just be able to, we might add a couple on this side, maybe three or four circles. Okay, this looks great. Now our next step right here is we're going to, with a heavy hand, try to create the darkest color we can going around all of these shapes. You can push and this is creating texture and pattern on our shell. The only places where we see the shine and the highlight is on within these little shapes we've made. Everything else is pretty dark in our picture. And as I color it in, I'll put that right there for you guys to observe as well. We're gonna go all the way through here, and we're also gonna go into there a little bit. You are welcome to color with me, or you can pause the video to finish your coloring. If your hand gets tired, feel free to take a break. If you have different kinds of graphite pencils, you want to use your B pencils here. This is going to be the darkest shade in our picture. It's quite amazing how beautiful shells are when you look at them up close. I used to find shells all the time in Florida. And I actually, in my last visit, I brought some home with me. I have them in a jar on my mantle. They are very beautiful. And I love that Rembrandt, master artist as he was, he found beauty in shells as well. All right, give it another minute, and then I'm going to pause it and finish off camera while you guys finish as well. Make sure our video is not too long. And again, when you get here, if you like, instead of trying to color in all these shapes, you can just color in the end. And then there you go. Already, just by coloring that in, you get this idea of, and as well as the smaller pieces to the larger ones, you get this idea of getting, of form, of perspective, of it getting smaller as it gets away from the camera. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and pause the video and finish coloring in and come back and we will shade together. Okay, so I have colored this section in, and now I'm gonna move to this section. Now I have 3 significant lines. I've already erased one, but the 3 remaining, the 3 circles, I am going to darken them. I'm gonna start with the outer one and do this for every one. Darken the circle, and then significantly color a dark ring around the outside of the circle. What this is this is a shadow, and we will make it look, we will blend it in but that's the first. Now we're not worrying. It's okay to cut off a piece of a shape because you want it to be consistent all the way through. Here's my next one, and this is again why we only drew the shapes half size, because we are drawing a thick ring on the outside of each of those 3 lines that we had remaining. All right, and then I'm just going to draw these shapes here. And one last, we're going to draw a thick ring on the outside of this one. I'm going to pause it and come right back. Okay, so I have those 3 rings on the outside of these 3 circular lines or backward C's. Next thing I'm going to do is color between each of these shapes as we have on all the others. Color them nice and black between. And I'll be right back. Okay, we are back. Now this is the fun part, the part where we shade in our piece. So let's go ahead and let's start with this part. I want you to observe that here we have about halfway and over, it's pretty darkly shaded here. So we're going to go in with our pencil and we're just going to shade it. And I can even darken real quick this middle circles that we did, but we're going to shade this pretty dark. And it might feel like we're kind of ruining our picture, but we are starting with creating the darkness that's going to make these highlights stand out. And we can make these little circles stand out a little more. And we want to stay within our lines of the outer shell. Okay, as we move here, let's go ahead and take a very light stroke all the way across. Now watch. I can move my hand back, okay, on my pencil. That'll help the weight of the pencil. That's the only thing that's going to create this shade. But the whole picture has a light coat of shading. We're going to go over every piece. Even the brightest section of this picture has some value, meaning it's not perfectly white like our paper. All right, so we have a light. All right, so now we want to preserve and get an idea where our highlight is going to be. Our highlight is going to be right here. Okay, we want these to be our brightest. So we're going to go in from this dark section and we're going to add more darkness, and eventually we want this to be the lightest. We're going to slowly get lighter. So this is where you vary your pressure. You can have more pressure here and less pressure here. Do the same on the bottom. And you can already see how this front of the shell is starting to really stand out. Okay? Now this bottom half is also going to be pretty dark. So we're going to go in and we're going to shade this pretty dark. Okay, and then we're going to get this, we're going to shade it, but it's slowly going to get lighter to this point. So we want it to still be shaded, but now we're trying to blend what's really dark here so it slowly becomes lighter. And this is kind of a messy process where you just have to figure it out as you go. So we can already see kind of a highlight. Now this is the brightest part, so I'm going to make sure there's that idea of, I'm using curved strokes because the shell is curved. Even up here, it's still kind of dark. And I'm almost creating like a half circle as I protect that area. Okay. So now I'm going to go in here and create a dark shadow sitting underneath this lip. And we are about done. Now it's just a matter of darkening certain areas to make this pop. I'm going to pause as I move around my paper and I'll show you the final product. Okay, I am all done. Really what I did is I just kept darkening the outer sides and I kept slowly working around this circular area. And I did go in with a very dark hand and outline the top and bottom of the shell. All right, we are all done. Feel free to write your initials on your paper. Please feel free to email me your shell at katieprawl@haven